Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being your show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about One-Punch-Man Season 3, Episode 8. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're opening with Flashy. I figured this episode would revolve around him and specifically the two ninjas that are after him. What are their names? Was it Flame and Wind, I believe? And so he's going on his way, and I love he runs into some monsters who are just like, hey, are you Flashy Flash? You're supposed to be super fast. And obviously he slices through them like nothing. He's like, right, I'm not the type of person that brags about their speed. Like he's like, only like idiots do. Like he made reference to like only like I'm not one of those type of people who does that. But he's like, some people do comment on how quickly I deal with things. But then he ends up running into the two ninjas and they're duking it out because they're like, okay, like, so let's see if your speed can match us because we're the perfect opponents for you because we will be the ones who outmatch you because you're known for your great speed, but we're like, you guys made a mistake of splitting up. You trying to fight your way here on your own. Like, nah, that was your huge mistake. So it's two of us versus you plus our speed. So they're dabbling in the hallway. Like, was it Wind that has like the steel wires? And then I think I talked about it maybe last season. Like, because I think I was like, oh yeah, like it kind of reminds me of because they were introduced last season. And I was like, oh yeah, it kind of gives me Apart vibes because that was the most recent example from Sakamoto days. I'd seen someone using wires, but I also thought of was it Kiyashiro from Mission Yosakura family is also in that same boat. Either way, I'm going on a tangent, but obviously Flashy, his way to deal with the wires that are spread around like spider webs, it's like, oh, I'll just cut up the walls. And they're like, all right, cool. Like, we'll just pick a better venue. And they flip the floor and they land in that space. So I was like, so that place they were fighting, like, they were training in this place previously. I was like, oh, I mean, they even said at the time they were training for Flashy, but I didn't know they had prepared this environment. They wanted a wide open space so they can utilize their speed and cut loose. Because it isn't just about, they wanted to initially narrow down his movements, but it's also because they were trying to still have some shred of honor. Even though they became monsters, they were still trying to fight as ninjas. But like ultimately when they couldn't beat Flash as like themselves because they also are still pretty new at being monsters, so they can't match they can't control their power, so their speed would be all over the place. But obviously this being the quote-unquote ninja fight, but you're like, moment it gets started, you're like, oh, we're talking Naruto ninja fight. It's like, okay, where it's just kind of like, oh, we're going full, like, bananas crazy style type of situation. I'm like, I don't know why, I'm a big fan. I'm gonna always be a sucker for it. Someone stabbing their sword into a wall and using it as, like, a landing, like, as a step. I'm always going to be a sucker for that. I love stuff like that because it's like the dopest, especially because like he stabbed his sword and he was sliding down the cliff and then ultimately stopped and he like kind of squatting on top of his blade. But like the exchanging of blows, the zipping around is pretty dope. And I do like the color representation, like the green, the red, and the yellow, and just like the sparks of like how they like clash with one another. Essentially, they're his seniors because I think they said like they're from the 37th generation. He's from, I think, the final generation, which was the 44th generation. He was the top of that. So for them, it's kind of like show some respect to your seniors because we're definitely better than you. Because maybe they brought it up last season. I'm like, other than I guess him just being the only notable one, maybe like because did he bring it into their village? Like, I forgot. I don't think they explained like what their actual beef with Flashy was. I guess it was just for the purposes of we just want to outshow you. Very, very, their ninja way type of thing. Maybe that's all there was to it. Because I feel like even when they were talking to Sonic last season, which I'm like, I just thought about it too. I'm like, I guess it's once again, it's only been like a little bit since season 2. It's only been like maybe a couple of days. So Sonic might still be like going through like his. Because I think when he ate it and shit it out, the last time we saw him, he was like, oh, super powered up. But it might be a thing of, yeah, but like he hasn't stepped into the fray yet. Like, I mean, we're also nearing the end of the season because I assume this season's only 12 episodes like the previous two. So, like, he might not have any appearance at all this season. Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to wait to see. But like, maybe he'll make a small appearance, like when it kind of gets to like the major threat of it all. Maybe he came here, coming after Saitama. I followed him down below because obviously we haven't caught up with Saitama in a couple episodes too. So, but even when they decided to stop holding back and started fighting as monsters, they were still fighting as ninjas, and so they were just souped up with what they did. And I like the like when they're dashing. They might have been before they turned into the monster cells, but they like them dashing and circling around him, like the green, the wind and flame, obviously very compatible with each other, mixing around him and striking at him. But Flashy is ready to counter all that, so he ends up breaking, I think, Flame's weapon, and it's just at this point there's no fighting him as ninjas anymore. It's like we have to fully embrace our monster form. We will pulverize you, and that'll be how we win. Because essentially, Flashy kind of comes at it from like, oh yeah, I forgot. That's the line. I was like, he made some comparison about something early on about like people who brag about their speed. He's like, yeah, that's something only like a side character would do. But it's like he screams main protagonist energy. Once again, this series being what it is, everyone's the main character of a different shonen series, just all wrapped into one. Everyone fits a shonen archetype and stuff, and hero archetype. But like him just being kind of like the stoic speedster swordsman, and him just being like all about training and effort being the thing that carries him. Because he was essentially telling them like unless they went all out, they and even if they did, they wouldn't be able to beat him because he's trained and put in more time than anyone else. It's not even about being gifted. It's just like I put in the time and effort to push myself. That's why I am where I am right now, skill wise. So, but initially, it seems like once they go full throttle, that they have the upper hand. But in classic fashion, like saving the most powerful move for last. I'm also a fan of just like a single strike. I'm a sucker for that too, where he's just like his sword was still spinning in the air, like he was dashing around, hitting them and attacking them, and also dodging their attacks. He did like his like rapid flash kick, and then he goes jettisons, grabs his sword that's still spinning, and then just in one fell swoop sliced them both in half. And despite everything, they still couldn't win, you know? And for them, it's kind of like the irritation of just like how powerful he was. Because essentially, he was like, if you guys face any of the other S-class heroes here, they would have been in trouble. Your biggest mistake was choosing me as your opponent. And even the last thing that Flame says, he's like, what was it that we lacked despite everything? It's like, it's like we just wanted to, I'm going to butcher it, but like, I think it's just kind of like taking life into their own hands, and because their plan was like avenge. No, this was someone else. I was about to say like I'm thinking of Phoenix Man. I'll get to him in a second, but they just wanted to kind of prove themselves, kind of take life into their own hands for once. But it's like, what do we lack? And just I was almost halfway expecting. I was like, is he going to say something like you weren't lacking anything? But it's like, of course he's going to say once again the cliche thing of you lack not enough training, and walked away as their bodies, like the ground or the bridges, crumble and their torsos, that's all that's left of them, fall down. You're like, oh, you're kind of sad, but it's also like, it's such a thing of like, kind of how beautifully serious this was. And it was just kind of like, yeah, that's the end of that. And then Flashy comes to a crossroad and he's like, oh, I should communicate with everyone. Oh, the device that's literally a map and communication device that Child Emperor said, like, keep hold of. Cool, I lost it. Huh. And then we cut to Child Emperor being like, huh, Flashy stopped moving. Huh. And it's like, if anyone was actually in any trouble, they'd kind of like send out a distress. I'm not worried as much about everybody. So he's going off on his own. Because the thing is, like, the anxiety aspect to this is finding a hostage. Because once you remove him from the equation, that's the biggest stressor. And it's like, oh, we have to get him out of here. Because the moment he's out of here, even Child Emperor's like, everyone else can cut loose finally. So we don't have to worry about holding it. Because, like, you know, Tatsumaki was told, like, yo, don't destroy this place because we need to find the hostage first. So he ends up finding the remnants of Metal Knight's suit, the one that got destroyed by Orochi, and he starts going through the data and finds out, wait, that bastard knew exactly where where the hostage was, and Child Emperor's like, that's some BS. I get you didn't want to get involved, but you knew this, and you like, oh, so he's like, never mind. Getting mad won't do anything. I got the information, but it's like, are you that much of a siloed off prick that is like, you had this information and you definitely had access to it and you just chose not to share it? Because he's not, even though he told Child Emperor not to trust anyone, you trusted him enough to say that, but it's like, he's like, well, I figured it out on my own. Like, it's like, if they can't find out on their own, then, oh, that's on them, you know? Getting this far, accessing my suit and finding information on your, cool, you did it on your own technically, but I mean, he's very much I'm gonna keep to myself, I'm gonna do my own thing. Just wonder what goes through that guy's mind sometimes, just like why he operates the way he does, you know. But at that same time, it's not like he's the only one. Like, all the heroes, you know, especially in the S class, kind of go their own way in a lot of ways. But I mean, you can also make the argument on Child Emperor kind of like immediately disregarding Bang and uh, Genos because he believed he couldn't trust him. So it's like, it's not like Child Emperor's too, but he's at least more willing to play nice with people, you know, more so than like Metal Knight, because Metal Knight definitely gives off the energy like he is better than other people. But nevertheless, what I wasn't expecting is when Child Emperor comes out and he's basically faced off of Phoenix Man, which obviously we got introduced to him last season. So I was like, all right, he's probably going to be a bigger threat. I thought like the fight with him, whole ordeal was going to run a little deeper because he's running his mouth off about like, right, how, well, first and foremost, he's pointing out how Child Emperor, it's like, you basically made it to the S rank, but you who just admire the heroes, you made your way there and just kind of like, you become complacent and arrogant. But he's like, to me, the Monster Association was just a stepping stone because I'm eventually going to take the title from Orochi. We're going to find out he just got stuck wearing this bird costume and then eventually turned into a monster. And he's like, this is going to be my opportunity. I'm going to take you down, and charges and attacks Child Emperor. But he has like a shield that kind of blocks, which I love that he's like, yeah, it's just a very thin thing that kind of reacts to sudden impacts. He's like, yeah, I could even have it. The thing he had wrapped around his candy was this. It's like, wow, kid's really good and prepared and stuff. So I think he said like, your biggest mistake, like if you were really that tough or that strong or whatever, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, you wouldn't have joined if you were really hot shit and really were like able to kind of prove yourself, you wouldn't have joined the Monster Association. The only reason why you did is because you're like, oh, it's a stepping stone, but it's like, because you couldn't do anything on your own, so you had to join the association. Because he tried to be like, oh, I'm you know, one of the higher ups in this whole organization. All a moot point because he got cut up by the Child Emperor, and I was like, I mean, he's not dead, is he? And it's like, we're moving on. So he could always pop back up, be like, oh, I'm still alive. I regenerated, yada, yada, yada. But for now, it seems like he's dead, which I'm like, I love, because I'm like, oh, I thought you would have had a bigger impact. I thought you would have been a bigger boss. It's like, you were kind of like a super mini boss. You weren't even just a mid boss, mini boss. You were a super mini boss. But like I said, we'll see if he ends up making a return or not. Child Emperor finds the hostage, releases him, gasses all the monsters in there, and then there's the creature that ended up grabbing Tereo and distracting Gato that let like King Ripper gain the upper hand against Gato like back in episode 2 or 3. That was episode 3, I believe. And so because of that, like that guy shows up, Child Emperor blocks being crushed by him, then proceeded to slash at him. But that did nothing. And then like stabbed him with a whole bunch of stuff. He's like, you think that's going to work? But it turns out he was injecting him with oil and then immediately lit him on fire and took off with the hostage. But then, you know, the hostage being the spoiled brat that he is. One, he's definitely not referencing Tereo at any point in time because he's assuming like, yeah, Tereo's dead. And even that's the case, like, they have a mission, like their priority is saving that kid, and the last thing he wants is like, I don't want you being a hero and sticking around trying to save some other kid when you're supposed to here to save me. So I think it's just interesting he's not referencing Tereo at all, because he's just assuming Tereo is dead. But we know he's here somewhere, not unless I doubt he managed to get out on his own. He's probably still wandering the place, so probably one of the other S-Class heroes will probably run into him. So it'll be interesting because it'll most likely end up being the case that one of the other S-Class heroes will just assume that he's the hostage. But you know what will probably end up being the case? He'll probably run into Saitama. That'll probably just be the lucky break of the hero he'll just happen to run into ends up being Saitama, or he run into some monsters and Saitama just happens to be there and immediately splatters them. I could see that being the case, but also but on the lower end, I could definitely see like one of the heroes mistaking him for the actual hostage, despite Child Emperor already having him. But yeah, the kid's selfish enough, like, oh, it took you long enough, and Child Emperor stared at him. He's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. It's like, you're such a pompous dick. It's like they did come to rescue and stuff. Be happy, but it's like, yeah, like we've already knew he was a selfish prick. His father is one too. You think you're hot shit. That affluence is getting to his head and stuff. So because he thinks of the heroes as like his personal bodyguards at his beck and call. This kind of reinforces it. The fact is they came all this way to save him and stuff because their top priority is rescuing him rather than dealing with the Monster Association. But that, comes after, saving the kid. So unfortunately, they end up running into the samurai guy, which, like I said, I still get the feeling like that's probably, I keep getting the name wrong every time. Drive Night. Had to Google that. Also, don't Google that, because I Googled something and like one of the early options, I was like, well, that kind of confirms something I was thinking about already. So I'm just going to forewarn you, like, don't Google One-Punch-Man Drive Night unless you want something spoiled for you. I mean, it wasn't a guarantee, but the fact is it was like a Google search. I was like, it confirms something I was already kind of guessing, and it kind of correlates with what I was thinking about anyway. But either way, I'm purposely letting go of the point I was trying to make just because of that said conversation. Either way, he shows up and Child Emperor has to deal with him, but none of his tools are working. In fact, he's burning through his items. We do see in the opening, it does seem like he has a mecha suit of his own, but that's probably like a last resort of like, I don't want to burn my like ultimate weapon, but he pulls out like those dogs and then they combined into like a Cerberus, which I thought was pretty dope. So, and in that moment, Child Emperor takes off with the Kit Kats. It's like, well, that's the top priority. That's all that matters right now. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure that's going to be the major clash of next episode, but who knows what other fights could get incorporated into. Like I said, we're in the back quarter of this season, so it's going to be interesting to see, how quickly these fights happen. Like, the opening kind of showcases some of them. Like, a My Mask is going to end up fighting the seductress lady, the lady who can mind control people, which is so interesting. I think that's actually kind of the perfect pairing, considering like a My Mask is like has that like pretty boy. He's the biggest celebrity amongst the Hero Association, and like fighting beauty, and her controlling people, and him being kind of a controlling prick in a lot of ways. It's the perfect matchup. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that all plays out over their next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.